A lot of the things that I was so certain of and how that cost me so much to hold on to or let go for that matter, to take the plunge and paradoxically enough, a step of faith away from my faith. The opposite of faith is not faithlessness, but it's fear.
The most important relationship that you've got to have if you want to grow, if you want to consistently grow, is you've got to have a relationship with the unknown.
You think that you need to get to the next level in business and you're just hustling for worthiness and you lose, like you said, a connection to yourself.
All right, we're here. You and I have spent a lot of time together, from being at GoBundance events to dorming up at GoBundance events and sharing a hotel space.
Nice.
Man, cold plunging in lakes, the whole deal.
That was good. That was a good run. It was a heroic run. We made it to the lake. It was good.
It was. So we've got to share some time, Anssi and I. One thing I've learned just being around you and in proximity to you is that you have spent a lot of time working on yourself, and you have definitely gotten out of your own way in a couple different categories over the last several years in particular.
Yeah.
Just because someone listening might not know what you do for work and where you have been spending your time lately. You said something to me once. You said, "Hey, my full-time job is growth therapy." So I want to dig into that a little bit. Tell us about you, your business, and what that world looks like, and then why that statement holds to be true.
Sure. So the quick and dirty about me is I've been in the U.S. for 10 years. I married an American girl, a Valley girl. I got kids 2, 4, and 7. And I run a company called Ironside Claims. We negotiate insurance claims on behalf of homeowners who want to get the maximum settlement for their insurance claims. I guess on a personal level, in my prior life, I was a preacher. And my largest crowd was about 12,000 people. But then I became an atheist, which was a little bit of a hassle for my marriage, for my family, and a number of other things. Today, I believe again in God. I don't claim to know what her name is, but it occurs to me that there's a greater source, and I live a spiritual life more so today, I think, than back when I was sort of a first round draft pick prospect in the evangelical draft of future preachers and all that. So that's sort of a little snippets about me. I've had my company in various permutations since 2017, where I got started in the insurance claims industry. But in the, Ironside Claims has been around 3 or 4 years at this point. It was one of those things where fairly quickly I came to a place where I was, for all intents and purposes, financially independent. And it's maybe a dark side of financial independence that doesn't get that much press, which is, what do you do after that? A lot of people sort of well, I'm going to make so much money so that I can fill in the blank, travel, whatever, spend more time with my kids and, do all the fun things and yada, yada. But bucket list is, I like to say, it's something that it's a bucket. The bucket of the bucket list has a hole in the bottom. It's leaking, and that, you cannot fill yourself with that because you're going to still come out feeling empty. So a couple of years ago, when I found myself in this position where I can go to work if I want to, or not. I'm going to make money either way. I find myself just playing fantasy football way too much, man. Reading the news way too much, and in the essence of the podcast, and just being in my own way in a lot of ways, because I was lacking a lot of purpose. I ran into a friend who pointed out, who was sort of in the same position in life, and he said, "Dude, I spent about 30-40% of my time just getting coached and improving myself." And that triggered an old Tony Robbins adage in my mind, which she said that the success of my business or someone's business is in direct correlation to their personal self-improvement. And I was like, oh shit, that's why I got into this whole entrepreneurship, is because the notion that I could just do personal improvement, full time for a living essentially. And now the business is just an extension of that. And now, kind of coming back to a long answer to a short question, I go to therapy full time. That's my job. That's the essence of it. I work with a number of different coaches. Last year, worked with 6 different coaches. This year is probably going to be a little bit less, but that's really the work and that I do. And then, as all areas of my life are held on or under accountability to somebody else, and I have visibility into all areas of my life, that's all I do, right? I don't stray from whatever my health coach is telling me to do. That's what I do. Or whatever my therapist tells me to do this week, that's what I'm going to do. Or my business coach, that's all I'm going to do this week. And it's a fun way to live.
That's not a long-winded answer. That's a very relevant answer. What 2 of those points I think are worth some more exploration. One, the bucket list has a hole in the bottom kind of framework, which I very much understand. I think that financial freedom is often an escape plan.
Absolutely.
Not an integrity plan.
Absolutely.
And the whole, I think you and I probably align on why we do this is to build an integrity plan. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to create in the world. This is the art that I want to present to others.
Yeah.
So I love that, and we can dig there. The other, though, is that by building all of these accountabilities with other people, you've kind of stepped out of managing. You've gotten out of the way of managing your life. You have allowed others and trusted others to guide you, to lead you, and in a way to better yourself by listening to them.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like when my health coach tells me to do something, I said, I'll try anything twice. And if it doesn't work, my commitment to you is that you will get the most consistent tryout of whatever you're prescribing to me. If it doesn't work for me, it was not because, the patient didn't do the work. I will do the work. And then it's way easier for them to say, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I did not realize that this would factor into what's going on as well. I would say 90% of the time, it's spot on, whatever it is that I need. And I'm finding myself, I read way less, kind of along the lines of something that you and I have talked about in the past, is that there comes this point where you're just taking in so much inputs. You're on this, it's exciting when you finally learn how to read for yourself. And you start taking in so many books. And now I'm finding that, man, that is such a waste of time. So much of it, because you can't take action. But now if I can go to my negotiation coach who's read every one of those 100 books on negotiation, I can bring, whatever biggest problem I have in that. And he's going to condense all of that information and make it actionable for me. And I only need to take action on it. It makes my life so much easier.
Man, I really think the line, the patient didn't do the work is a bigger one than most people would attest to right away. So I'm one of the people among many that do coaching. And I think that what is interesting around being the patient, because I also have coaches, is that we have very limited information about a person. No matter how good we know someone and how much they might convey, it's still limited.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're going in and doing the work and then saying, hey, here's my response, here's where I got stuck, here's where it's not vibing for me, is to me a brilliant process of trusting the unknown.
Oh yeah.
And my opinion is that the most important relationship that you've got to have if you want to grow, if you want to consistently grow, is you've got to have a relationship with the unknown. How has that changed over time? Was there a point where the unknown was scary to you and leaving everything and coming to the States was a big deal? Was it always something that you were like, oh man, let's go, send it?
Yeah. So I think I'll bring my spiritual journey a little bit. Well, I'll go even a little bit further back, so my mom died when I was 5. And as a result, I very much detached from myself. And as a result, I very much lived in my head. And I took that into my spiritual practice where it was all about proving the existence of God or whatever, historical resurrection of Jesus Christ or something like that. And that was the hill I was ready to die on. Because I was so living in my head, it was all about certainty and all about the knowing. Until I came to a point of realizing I felt like I became sufficiently tested in my capacity to know things and be certain of things. And I was exposed sufficiently to other worldviews and the intellect of others to where I realized, like, man, maybe I shouldn't be so sure and so certain about life itself and the things that I think I know and have such strong frameworks around it. And I think it was a step of courage on my part to recognize and a step of intellectual honesty to recognize that, wow, a lot of the things that I was so certain of and how that cost me so much to hold on to or let go for that matter, to take the plunge and paradoxically enough, a step of faith into away from my faith, away from the framework that I came from. So yeah, I came to a place where uncertainty, I became very, very happy with it, and it's very interesting and very freeing place to be, having been on both sides of the equation of being totally free to say that I don't know, and I'm not certain about it. And I think, again, paradoxically, that's where the life of faith begins. It occurs to me that the opposite of faith is not faithlessness, but it's fear. And it seems to me that's the pair. Fear and faith are the two opposite ends of the spectrum, where fear would cause you to cower, fight, freeze, or fawn, and faith is the response of, I think it's going to be all right. Whether that takes on a religious form or not, I'm not religious today anymore per se, but I'm very much a person of faith in that connection of the word. That it's going to be all right, and that's a muscle that has to be exercised, just like it had to be when I tied it around more doctrinal bits and pieces. Again, alliance. Your fault for asking such a complex question.
So would you say that in some cases, maybe all of them, that the departure from what is known is the leap of faith? So the departure from religion is the leap of faith in that example?
Oh, absolutely. Because it was very costly. It could have potentially been very costly to me. There was somebody who's very close to me, somebody in my family, who said, you leaving your faith was the hardest thing that ever happened to me besides the death of our mother.
Jeez.
Yeah. So the relational cost was tremendous. And I hurt a lot of people in the process.
It sounds like that event, especially, I love the phrase intellectual honesty. If that event had a ripple effect, not all positive, required a deep calculus about what it means to go somewhere unknown, what it means to yield to something that cannot possibly be quantified before you make the choice. You just had to go. You just had to leap. And let's play that story out. So now it's very easy for you to reach into the unknown, for you to trust somebody, for you to get out of your own way and say, like, hey, you tell me where to go. You tell me what to do. I will be faithful to the information that you give me or the advice that you give me. But that's a wide story, right? That was a long time ago. Have you ridden the ups and downs of like being afraid of leaning into the unknown or taking another leap of faith that came with a lot more trepidation?
I think it's just like adding plates into the bar. Maybe you bench, 2 full plates, and that at some point that felt like a lot. but then you're way past that point. Well, that 2 plate still, you're good with lifting it, but I think if anything, it starts a trend.
Yeah.
That teaches your mind to recognize the value of it to the point where you
Nice.
want to keep following that trend.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm thinking of the bits and pieces where I'm having to get out of my own way right now, where faith is required of me, and yeah, there's trepidation on my part right now, asking the question: Am I making the right choice? I'm recruiting a bunch of new people in my company right now, and there are a couple of particular key hires that I'm trying to figure out. Like, is this the right fit? What's going to be the opportunity cost if I make the wrong choice? Am I financially positioned in the right way to take on as much or this amount that I'm taking on right now? So yeah, I definitely live with that trepidation. I'm having to lean over the edge, just the same.
I think what has taught me the most as I've had to navigate fear and still make the choice is looking back and saying, hey, most every time, if not every time, that I've made a choice where I had my moment of intellectual honesty, I had my reflection, I understand what the choice is, I understand what the cost of the choice is, and I'm still just afraid, but I trust that on the other side, or I have faith that on the other side, it will be okay. And if it's not okay yet, it's just not done. It's not resolved. And I think my relationship has changed from where it used to be, I need to know this is going to be okay, to I can make this choice knowing that there might be rough seas ahead. I know that I have to make the choice, even if there are rough seas ahead, and I can't stay here, so I must go. And there's almost like a place that I've gotten, and I'm curious if you've gotten here too, sounds that you have, where with the fear you go, with the trepidation you go, and that's almost the indicator that you're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you walk with the fear, you walk with the faith at the same time. But I think that the toolkit becomes very, very applicable, because you realize you're in a place of fear in your life right now, and you realize you have to make a choice. But recognize the fact that after you make the choice, you still have the same capability of making another choice after that. And you can always change your mind.
Nice.
So I recognize that, maybe I'll make the wrong hire in this moment. Well, I can change my mind. I can fire the person. Or, but then I'm going to be faced with another fear, which is the fear of the confrontation. It's going to be very comfortable to have that conversation. Well, I guess I'll have to get over myself again, and I'll have to change my mind. So that's something that I feel like I'm becoming fairly good at, is changing my mind.
That's great.
And it's interesting. So I'm a negotiator, right? And the phrase that I use a lot, stole it from Chris Voss, is, are we so decided on what's best here that we would not take something better? So that's something, a maxim that I try to live by, in that I do not try not to go into a situation having made up my mind that it has to be a certain way. And that, I feel like, gives a lot of freedom in dealing with one's fear.
I love talking about fear, and I really love talking about the things that happen when we make bold choices. And it's really important to share that you can change your mind, dude. I will never forget this. I was new into entrepreneurship, and I read the book Insanely Simple by Ken Siegel. One of the few books that I didn't power my way through to try to impress everybody about the number of books that I've read. And so this was a story about Apple and Steve Jobs from the inside. And Steve Jobs was known for his very harsh boundaries and high standards and expectations, and being rather critical of people that didn't need to be in meetings and kicking them out, and making sure that the bus was held to really, really high, tight boundaries and lines. And also, he was known to change his mind a lot. He was known to say, yep, that was yesterday, but this is today. And just these things that empowered him to maneuver to the world that was real and also be firm and fast in the unknown and not getting caught up in the like, well, I decided it, so maybe I was wrong or right. To me, it takes a lot of humility to change your mind, and not humility from the lens of like be small, humility from the lens of owning, being aware, and serving. To me, the definition of humble is ownership with humility and service. Have you had to embody and own your choices better to be able to change your mind? Has that been a key ingredient in being able to be more fluid?
Say that one more time.
Have you had to own your choices and know them better to be able to be more fluid when you decide to change your mind?
Yeah, I think there's a very, I feel like Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership was the kind of the book that gave me the language to something that's very, very key. The notion that it's always your fault. And I feel like living a life, especially in relation to being a leader, living my life in the light of that, it's always going to be my fault because I'm at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. Yeah, it makes me weigh my responsibility in a very different way. That triggered another thought, which is which comes from the Japanese work called Hagakure. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Which is sort of the biggest compilation of texts on Bushido, which is the samurai code of honor. The samurai would be honor bound to commit ritual suicide when his landowner died, when his leader died. And it's caused me to reflect this notion that what would it look like in my life if my guy, Uncle Tony, one of my best sales guy, if he died, if he was honor bound to kill himself when I die, what would it demand of me as a leader by the way I lived my life? If my death, what would my life need to be that you would honor also his death as well as mine?
Oh, wow.
Which is a profound question, but actually, I feel like there's an even more profound level to that, which is the fact that yes, Uncle Tony probably won't give his life for me per se, or his death for me, but he is giving his life for me every day. He's telling his family, hey, we should follow this cat, his vision to what we're doing. I should be spending my time this way behind what this guy has envisioned. And that is a high piece of demand on me. Like the fact that he chooses to spend his breath honoring my vision, it's a high bar that I do not take lightly in terms of the responsibility that it brings.
That question is a leadership question that will get underneath your skin.
Like no other that I've ever encountered.
No, I do think the idea of being an entrepreneur and leadership is often misrepresented to say like, well, you have the vision, so therefore you've done enough, right? That you're the visionary. So just hang out all day and like make visions happen, draw on whiteboards and make diagrams and, tell us the tales. And
Right.
I think the misrepresentation there, one, is that when we have this idea of visionary integrator, it implies that the only thing a visionary does is the vision. And I think that's fundamentally flawed in entrepreneurship.
Right.
The other thing I find is that 90% of being a visionary that people don't talk about, because the 10% is like, yeah, cast a vision. 90% is take care of the people that are making the vision happen. And that is a much harder place to be, because leadership is the bottom of the pyramid, not the top of the pyramid. And I would love to hear your thoughts about how you've changed as a leader to become the person that, hey, if Uncle Tony is leading his life through the vehicle that is embodied by my vision, he is connected to me in a way that's so unique and special. So how have you had to grow as a leader? How have you had to get out of the way and again, be the bottom of the pyramid, not the top of the pyramid?
I guess just a framework notion first. I view my job as the visionary, as a CEO, through three lenses. My job is just the vision, the culture, and the resource allocation. If a CEO is doing something else, they're probably doing it wrong, or the company is just too small to be able to maintain an integrator. But I feel like, yeah, it really, especially over the last year and a half, I've noticed it's sort of along the times when I sort of came to this strong conviction. I find myself checking out and just scrolling on my phone, just goofing off, fairly seldom. I find myself to be a lot more present to my life.
Nice.
Because that's to be the best example to my people. I need to honor that. I was doing my Peloton ride yesterday. It's getting hard, and I was just thinking of all the people that depended on me as this new week rolls around. And I just realized, like, man, I got to be the best version of myself. So I got to finish this ride strong right now. And I hit my personal record and all that. And I was driven by my people. Very, very interestingly.
I think leadership takes a lot of responsibility. And if you're doing it correctly, which sounds like you are, there's back to the piece about Jocko and extreme ownership. There is a degree of, we got to own it all. There's also a degree of, we have to hold other people accountable. And sometimes things have nothing to do with us. How do you navigate that gap where I think we all thrive on accountability? It's why you have 6 coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to create an organization where there is accountability and also have the mentality that, hey, my fault and my responsibility. How do you close that gap from being really wide?
There's a very tactical piece to that. I think that comes through an integrator, but for me, because I actually discovered that as much as I love accountability in my life, I'm kind of a kumbaya kind of a guy, and I'm not the best at accountability. So I have other people in place for that purpose, because they're more the drivers of that. It's an interesting look at military organizations. It's usually the non-commissioned officers that are the key drivers of accountability. Not necessarily, sure, the officers to a degree, but at a higher level. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of the everyday, it's not the general all the way up top who's, inspecting all of that. It's somebody else doing it. So in a very tactical arena, the leading management accountability, that piece, that falls in a different place in the organization. And then I very much stay as the custodian of the vision and the culture. So there's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny how much you embody what it means to get out of the way.
Thanks.
and you, even here, right? Like, hey, I would love to bring everybody together and give them all hugs, but I know the organization needs something, and it's not me.
Yep.
To me,
man, there's something amazing that David Osborne was saying. Is obviously he owns multiple companies and a whole portfolio of them. He said that, yeah, I could go to any one of those companies. I could work my ass off 100 hours a week, and I could only create minor incremental addition of value in any of my companies because of the way they're set up today. Because my individual effort has to go somewhere else. And it's an interesting paradox of what got me here won't get me there.
Yeah.
My assumption only is that the reason this podcast is named the way that it is with that notion of is after that notion is that you always have to succeed, get to the next level of success, whatever that means, financially, spiritually, personally, emotionally. You need to become a different version of yourself, and I think that's part of the piece of getting out of your own way.
Yeah, for sure. It's been my journey. I know you and I have talked at length. one of the stories that will forever rank very high is you and me playing the game of dice at this GoBundance event, right? So if you're listening, I'll give you some context to this. Anssi and I are both part of a mastermind group called GoBundance. And that group has single-handedly changed my life. And having gone to enough events, what I've learned is that the killer in a big mastermind or any kind of big event is comparison and FOMO. And I was rattled by that, especially early on. But over time, what I've learned is that some of the most formative moments, some of the most unique moments, some of the most special moments come from almost the mundane, the like connections that are forged over nothing special. They're just there. You're just present. Yeah. So instead of chasing all of the different activities, Anssi and I found ourselves back at the hotel room. We had some cigars. We sat outside and we played a dice game. What was the name of that dice game?
It's called Forkel, which means
Forkel,
loser.
Yes.
Which is loser in German, apparently. And the $100 that I got from that, because you're such a Steelers fan, right? So this guy's a Ravens guy. I bought myself a Steelers hat with nice. with my earnings. I should have worn it for this.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
It would have been awesome.
We played a couple rounds. I think we did a practice round or two so I could learn the rules. And then, I got totally skunked and had to pay my losing bet of $100 to Anssi. And what was interesting about that moment, to think about presence and getting out of your own way, is that there was a version of me that prior to that would have been so anxious about what everyone else was doing, about what I was supposed to be doing, about what would get and net the most value, about what could, would, and should be, that I wouldn't have been able to just sit there and get my ass handed to me in a game of Farkle. And what strikes me is that both of us had to be extremely present, but both of us also had to say no to all the other distractions. And I think one of those growth plates that changed a lot, especially for givers and people that are charitable in their intentions, is that we learn how to set lines and boundaries and say no more frequently. And that's the only way to more. The way to more is less.
Goodness.
What are some of the things? It sounds like phones, fantasy football, some of those things have been things you've cut. But what are some other like practical examples of things that if you look back on your pathway, you had to cut these out to be able to rise and to fly?
Yeah, it's it reminds me of the story Tim Grover talks about this. Maybe Michael Jordan would just win a NBA championship. They'd talk, and the day after, the week after, of okay, what's the next campaign going to look like? And his question would not be, hey, what can we do better next time? But his question would always be, what will we have to delete to maintain the focus that we had this earlier time? And it's another way of saying that no piece, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the low-hanging fruit, right? Well, relatively so. Don't scroll your phone so goddamn much, and say no to alcohol and the drugs and the vices, and weed that stuff out. But then comes a point when you need to start saying no to good things. So I noticed friendships is one place where you will find yourself struggling, especially when you take a sort of rocket ship trajectory. That's a place where you'll discover a new sense of loneliness, because the amount of times you hear must be nice or good for you. Mm-hmm. The emphasis on you, like I don't have anything to do with that, and sort of negative energy that you potentially experience. That's a unfortunate consequence. A good thing that you will have to say no to, and a beautiful thing that you'll have to say no to, and you'll have to start weeding out. Interestingly enough, almost phonetically so. It is hard to get a hold of me. I probably get at least one upset message every other week. Just got one on Saturday where it's like, hey, you don't answer my phone call. And I say nothing personal. I only answer my wife. Like just about nobody is able to get a hold of me just because I have a mission that I'm on. And the consequence of that is that I need to be focused on whatever it is that I'm focused on in any given moment. And people pretty reliably will know that they will hear back from me at a given point. But unfortunately, that too is a new thing where connection has started looking very, very different for me. Now, you mentioned sort of you and I really cherish that moment. And I'm so grateful that we both were able to say no, because there would have been, multiple 9-figure guys you and I could have been talking to at that event in that moment in time. But at the end of the day, it's presence and being present to any given moment that yields the greatest value. Because I think you said very well. It's the FOMO and the comparison that sap all the joy. And instead, we had the grace in that moment just to stay present to a stupid game of dice.
And here's to me what makes that special, and I hope that whomever is listening can connect this back to their experience. Let's say in our lifespan we go to 15 GoBundance events, and at each of those events there's 3 days. So there's 45 days where we could have conversation about business, we can have a conversation about life, and we can talk about our money, our goals, our dream, our vision. We can do all that. I don't know that there will ever be another time where I'm in Georgia at Lake Oconee, sitting on a balcony in a bathrobe, having a cigar, playing a game of Farkle. There will never be another that, right? And I think it gets really difficult sometimes for us to recognize the forest from the trees. Like that to me is success. When everyone else is doing what they want to do, am I doing what I want to do?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes a really hard question to figure out. Like, what do I want to do? I struggle with that on a day-to-day basis, even to the tune where I have hard emotional moments and I'm like, what do I need right now? Like that is a hard question for me to answer sometimes, because I have to really feel and read into what I'm experiencing enough to say, like, what do I need right now? And I think that moment is a great example of me answering the question, what do I need in this moment? Like, I just need a game night with a bro.
Yeah.
And I think that forged a whole new level of conversation and relationship with you, but it was also a great example of that. What do I need right now versus what is everyone else saying that I need?
Yeah, because if you go with the comparison to whatever, maybe you're looking for that one connection or whatever that, you think that you need to get to the next level in business, and you're just hustling for worthiness, and you lose, like you said, a connection to yourself. I find myself tuning into that a lot more, especially as I've been doing my therapy work, my inner child work, asking the question what it is that I'm needing in this moment. There's a conversation I had, one of the last ones on Friday and last week, and I had to go back and apologize afterwards because I sort of just started just verbally dumping in that conversation because I stopped hearing myself, and I even verbalized in that conversation. I'm just verbally processing right now, and for whatever reason, I thought it was okay, but I'm recognizing like, no, I actually at that point I should have recognized. Well, should is not a great word always. I now realize that what would have been more helpful would have been saying, hey, I'm not hearing myself anymore. We've had an awesome conversation up until this point, but at this point, I think I'm finding myself checking out, and I'm not hearing myself clearly anymore. Let's continue the conversation when I hear myself again.
Nice. Yeah. There is a lot of awareness in a statement like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's I feel like this comes out the best in my most intimate relationships, where things get spicy, and I think even someone like you just now hearing this in conversation, maybe can be a pointer to yourself to ask yourself that question. Am I still listening? Do I still hear myself? And it's totally okay in conversation to say, hold on a second. I stopped hearing myself in this conversation. Can you hold on just a sec? Well, while I gather my thoughts. And many times in my conversation, after I say that, I'm just checking in with myself to wonder if I'm still able to hold space for what's coming at me right now, or do I feel like I need to say something? Which a lot of times I say, "Hey, Aaron, sorry, I'm can you hold on a second? Let me just hear myself for a second." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm good. Sorry, what were you saying? I just needed to make sure that if I needed to say something, but I'm not finding anything I need to say right now. I'd love to keep holding space for you."
That is such a good tactic.
Yep.
The way that sounds to me is I've run out of capacity to listen. Like I'm full. Like, let me chew a little bit, and then I can either decide to speak or I can intake more food.
Yeah, and I think that's really honoring to the person that's talking. Because I mean, if I talk to you and you start looking at your phone, I'm like, well, I'm throwing my pearls before the swine, to use a biblical parable. But we do that, even if somebody's not on their phone. Like mentally, I go to my phone sometimes in a conversation, and I think at that point, that too is a blessing. I was just reflecting on that as much shame as we heap on ourselves with regards to our phone usage and our social media and checking out and whatever your particular shit cycle on your device is, we all have that. That's actually such a blessing, because that identifies two things. It's like most likely you're checking out, and you can go back in your mind and recognize the emotion that preceded that. What is it that you're hiding from? But also that usually happens in a place that you have not established clear habits in your life. For me, it is very clear today, after I put my kids down, very reliably, you will find me in my reading chair journaling. And this arose from this insight, like, why does that, after I put the kids down, I always pull out my phone and I kind of check out. Yeah, well, mentally, I'm making the excuse or the notion like, well, I need a little downtime right now. But that helped me recognizing that that's what I do. That helped me identify a slot where I have a habit. The phone just takes up so many of your habit slots, and now you can start inserting something more wholesome there. So I realized, hey, I could probably use a little bit of downtime actually unloading what's on my brain, doing my habit journal. That's when I do it now. I do my habit journal always after the kids go down. It was only because I was following my phone usage, because that's the best indicator of where you could be inserting something better in your life. Yes.
That is such a crunchy nugget for everybody, me included. Habit slots are visible when you go to grab your phone. Damn.
There you go.
That's good.
Yeah. No, I was very happy to stumble upon it.
Okay. As we wind down, the thing that speaks to me most, that is a through line between all of our dialogue, is the phrase intellectual honesty. Still really like enamored by that. And the reason it serves as a through line is that when talking about faith or fear and the spectrum there, when talking about changing your mind, intellectual honesty is important. When talking about honoring those that choose to work with us and our vision, intellectual honesty is a great element and component of that reflection. Thinking about what Michael Jordan said, what would we have to delete to keep the focus? Like, intellectual honesty stands there too.
Yeah.
Same with this habit slot. And maybe you can connect some of it with awareness, but to me, awareness has an open-endedness that intellectual honesty chisels away at really sharply, where intellectual honesty sounds like it's awareness coupled with truth
Mm,
without the skew and the bias. It's just the mirror in a lot
mm.
of ways. And I'm curious if someone was to stumble upon this or heavily follows this and is one of my diehard fans, if they're listening and they're like, how can I bring more intellectual honesty into my life? Like I'm working on awareness. I have some of that, but that idea of intellectual honesty really stands to be really punchy and direct.
Mm.
How would you encourage them to either start or continue down that path?
Start using the word seems with everything. It's so fun to see my 7-year-old daughter use that word. It's not until you use the word seems that you actually know what you think about something. And if you use the word seems, you don't make a factual statement that you feel like you need to a hill that it becomes a hill that you need to die on. So you actually hedge a little bit. When I use the word seems, it's something. It seems like this and that. I might be wrong, but that's honestly how I feel in this moment. That's what it seems to me.
Mm.
It seems to me that dinosaurs probably were not just 6,000-year-old part of creation. It seems to me that the fossil record reflects a longer period of time. That was a little moment of intellectual honesty from my history because I used to think Earth is literally 6,000 years old.
Mm.
And when I just used the word, it seems like that, then it opened my mind to the possibilities. So I would say, yeah, that hedging using the word seems. Second thing is writing. Using it in writing. Writing and journaling is such an honest affair or undertaking because so many of our thoughts are so ambiguous, amorphous. It's hard to get a hold of them. And a lot of times you don't even know what you think yourself because you can't hear yourself or you don't have a formulated opinion about something. And then if you just come out and say it, even in writing, you realize, oh, I did not realize that's what I believe about it. And thirdly, there's a very, very well articulated and formalized way of doing this. It's a book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie.
Katie, yeah.
Doing the work, you'll discover anytime you find yourself angry that there's a belief behind that. And Byron Katie's work and the worksheet that goes with it, you writing it out, you'll very quickly learn what you believe about something. So as an example, so I used to have a lot of anger issues. When my third child was born, also happened to coincide with the time when my daughter became of the same age as I was when I lost my mother. So a lot of things, came loose, got knocked loose in that moment. I found myself like just upset with my kids when they would throw a tantrum. And I realized in one of these moments of intellectual honesty and digging into the framework of that Byron Katie puts out, I realized that I had this belief that if kids are properly fed, hydrated, and slept, they should not have tantrums. Because that's how I was. That's what I would go to in my childhood to soothe myself and make sure that I had probably hydrated, eaten, and slept. Those are easy go-tos. So I would start having this tantrum if my kids were having tantrum because my internal rule was being broken. Kids should not have tantrums if these three things are in place. And then when I actually had to write it out, I was like, shit, that's a dumbass belief. What world do I live in? And I'm discovering just about every time I use the word should, there's a dumbass belief behind that. And just about every time there's a should in my life, I'm bound to get angry. So should is just not a word that I'm a fan of, and the word seems is. So I guess again, somewhat of a long answer, but I feel like there's a lot of tactical points to hold on to.
Yeah, good utility in that. That feels to me as if I'm reaching out to a brass doorknob, slowly rotating it and just letting the door creak open slowly to new ideas and to new possibilities in a
Correct.
way that doesn't feel like I'm barrel rushing through the door. I'm just opening up to myself. I'm opening up to a mirror, opening up to someone else's ideas.
Seems like it. Like it. And then, because the beauty of the word seems like it, I can always change my mind back.
That's right.
So it allows me a little bit of time to entertain a new idea, but I can again change my mind.
Wizardry. Okay. If someone wants to learn more about you,
now I'm fairly incognito, man.
That's why I asked it that way.
which is kind of fun. No, there's a fairly big part of me that's wanting to start recording my journey in a little bit more visible way. That's I think it of service to other people. And right now, where I am sort of sending people to is just follow me on Instagram, Anssi_Ironside. My first name is spelled ANSSI _Ironside, and I'll start potentially publishing content there at some point, and then there's going to be another way to. So that's a good waiting room for what we might be able to start uncovering. Yeah, I have a number of awesome people that I have sort of mentally and in brief conversations already lined up to engage in some of these same ideas, and I think going to be particularly helpful for the struggling entrepreneurs in figuring out along the same lines as what you're saying, getting out of their own way.
Well, that audience is never ending, unfortunately.
Hopefully.
It seems that today we may have helped unlock a couple doors. This was a really, really powerful conversation all the way top to bottom. I appreciate you being here. I know time is important to both of us, and to share this with people and to talk about these concepts that you and I typically get to have over a game of Farkle is incredibly special. So thank you for making the time today.
For sure, man. Yeah, I feel very energized by the conversation. But I had a good time.
Me too. Thank you for listening, whomever you are, wherever you are. We are so grateful to have your ear today. This is a passion for sure to find tactics. And not only did we talk about the emotional elements, but we got crunchy into some things that Anssi mentioned. I would highly recommend that you read that Byron Katie book, and that you are intentional about your language, about finding coaches, about finding individuals that can hold you accountable to change and growth. And if we can be one of those resources, check out our website, getoutofyourownway.coach, or reach out. We've got retreats opening up in June. We've got some one-on-one slots that'll come open later this quarter. And at the very least, we'd be happy to sit for 45 minutes with you and help you figure out your pattern to help you get out of your own way. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one.